Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada. In episode 58, we speak with retired Navy SEAL and author Jason Redman.
We have on Lieutenant Jason Redman. Right, he's a retired naval officer and U.S. Navy SEAL, founder and spokesperson of the nonprofit organization Wounded Wear, and the author of the memoir The Trident, which I'm reading right now, by the way. That's been my late night reading, and I'm absolutely loving it. And tremendous congratulations on that. The forging and reforging of a Navy SEAL officer. Just getting into your years active, 92 to 2013, and we thank you for your service. Your awards, I mean, I'm going to read them off because it's pretty impressive, but it's going to take a while. Purple Heart, Bronze Star Medal with Valor, Navy Commendation Medal, Joint Service Achievement Medal, Ranger Tab, Navy Achievement Medal, 5 awards, Combat Action Ribbon, 2 awards, Alumni Service Award. Old DU, you went to Old Dominion University.
Yeah, man. Go Monarchs.
I was looking to play baseball there. That was one of the schools.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and I made the mistake of staying up north. But, thank you for being on. I've heard so many great things about you from Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and her husband Shane, and I got the privilege, Derek, of being able to meet Jay this past few weeks, and one of those people that you just meet and you just immediately know what a great human being, and you just want to be around. And was kind enough to send me an autographed copy of his book, and now I'm hooked on it, Derek, and I know you're going to love it as well.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
I'll have to get Derek out a copy. So
thank you. So
we'll coordinate that afterwards. We won't give your address over there.
So is it correct to be calling you Lieutenant Redman? Should we be calling you Jason? I mean, talk to us right now about this, because I want to do what's the right thing is and not offend you.
Yeah, I mean, it is correct to call me Lieutenant, although I kind of look at it as that was one phase of my life. Right. And I am now in the second phase of my life. So I'm a civilian, no different than you guys. I mean, I served 21 years in the military. So, I definitely prefer Jason or Jay. There are definitely some people I think enjoy, that part of the military, and call you lieutenant or some of their old ranks. But for me, I've made the transition. I am now a civilian. I'm now a business owner. I'm now a coach and consultant. So I'm out there just trying to help people. And obviously that was an awesome part of my life. But, I'm now on the new journey, always looking forward. That's what I tell people. You should always be looking forward at the next goal. Use your experiences to make you better. But a lot of people waste a lot of time looking at their past and, resting on the laurels or just want to. So that's why I don't live that way. And I even try and recommend that to other military members. There are some who really all they focus on is what they did in the military. And I'm like, hey, man, we got to look forward. That's an amazing part of your life. But, there's a whole big world out there.
So, I mean, obviously, husband, father, book writer now, business person, fitness, fanatic. I mean, this is a huge passion of yours. Would you mind backing up and telling us, I want to get into your book and I want to talk about it because it is, I'm already reading and I could tell it's going to be one of those life-changing books that you read. It's going to be one of those top of your list books that I think anyone, no matter who you are, business person, athlete, parent, it just seems it's about leadership and it's about struggles and it's about taking situations that were truly terrible situations that you were put in. And what was most incredible about you is how you're very positive. Even when things went wrong, it seemed like, and I don't know if that was something that started with you early on or if you evolved into that, but would you mind telling us your story?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I love to tell people that the book, if you broke it down, you're absolutely right. It is a book about leadership, but I would even, if you break it down more, it's a book about failure and redemption and catastrophic injury and recovery. And then it's a love story because interlaced throughout the whole thing is my wife and how we met, just talk about an amazing Spartan woman. So all those things play in. So, How did I, some of that, I came from my family was military. My dad was Army. My grandfather was a decorated World War II pilot. So when I was younger, it was all I ever wanted to do. I definitely was not probably the average person's image of what a SEAL is, especially when I was younger. I mean, I'm not a big guy. Now I'm 5'8". I'm about 170, 175. And a little bit on the smaller spectrum for SEALs, although a lot of people don't realize they wrongly assume SEALs are all these great big guys, and we're not. The average Navy SEAL is about 5'10" and 180. Just the amount of cardio and the amount of strength you have to have with your own body weight actually weeds out a lot of the really big guys. Their bodies just can't withstand that impact over and over and over again over the 7 months to a year of SEAL training. But I just, from a young age, that's what I wanted to do. The one thing, and I will say the positivity probably grew as I got older, and that gets into a whole nother realm of something I call emotional leadership. But the one thing I did have above all others when I was young was just this relentless drive. And being smaller, I literally was the proverbial 90-pound weakling when I was, 14, 15 years old, and decided I wanted to be a SEAL right about that age, and walked in 14 years old, walked into the recruiting office and basically said, I want to be a SEAL. And they laughed me right out of the office. They told me, don't waste their time, beat it. And thankfully, instead of it crushing my dreams, it lit a fire under me. And I was like, I will prove you wrong. And it just started this drive and this goal to get myself in shape. And I went out for the football team. I was not a star player, but I played. I started wrestling. I started working out. And I just focused on getting myself ready to screen and go to SEAL training at the age of 17. And man, everybody I met told me I'd never make it. And it was I'd write that name down, just another name to add to the list. And, I'll prove you wrong. And, my life has been a little bit that way. I wasn't that, I sometimes like to think I'm not that smart because oftentimes people will tell me I can't do something, and it only fuels my fire to do it and prove them wrong. As I get older and a little wiser, I'm starting to take a step back and look at, okay, who is this person saying that? And what is your experience level to tell me that? Is there validity in what they're saying? Can I learn from it? Are there things I can pick out of it? Because when I was younger, I didn't look at any of that. It was merely hey, you can't do this, so I'm going to prove you wrong. So friends used to joke, there was the easy way, the hard way, and then there was Jay Redman's way. And younger, I always picked Jay Redman's way.
That's it. That's unbelievable. Derek, sorry about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously everything you've done is probably, way above anything Don and I have done. So we'll get that right out of the way right away. But what are some of the myths? Like whenever I talk to somebody who's involved in the military and then we're involved in fitness, we always hear about like, oh, this is obviously Navy SEAL training. And what are some of the things that you've, experienced where you're like, okay, that's valid. We can do that as part of civilian training. And what part of it are we missing, or is somebody maybe making too much of? Where, like Don and I were talking about even Tiger Woods, right, and his situation. What can we take from your experience, I guess, from a fitness or preparation point of view, and what do we maybe need to just let go and not do these types of things with general population?
I think the biggest thing that the general population probably gets wrong, and I watch a lot of kids do getting ready for training, and I'll be honest, it was the same mistake that probably the SEAL teams made years ago when I first came in. We probably chronically overtrained and did things wrong that injured guys a lot. When I was a younger SEAL, so this is in the early to mid 90s, it was rare. Almost you were a unicorn if you made it to 10 years in your career and you had not had a shoulder or a knee surgery. So a lot of that had to do with the way we were training. We were incredibly physically hard. I mean, guys were strong. They could, but it had a lot more to do with mental strength and driving through pain than it did really good physical and cardiovascular conditioning. So these days, the SEAL teams have gotten a lot smarter with that. We now have a whole human performance initiative, and we base programs off a guy's strengths and weaknesses. And they specifically look at a guy's body and see where is he stronger, where is he weaker, and they develop programs tailored to that individual so that we are truly putting the best version of that individual onto the battlefield. So in the civilian world, what I see is people get into this idea of, oh, I'm going to do Navy SEAL training, so I'm going to put a rucksack on, and I'm going to put boots on, and I'm going to be hard as nails, and I'm just going to push myself until I break. And what people don't understand is there's a time and place for that, and really for us, that time and place is combat. In the sports world, that time and place would be during a very high level competition, like maybe the Olympics. That's your time and place that you're going to push yourself to the breaking point. Beyond that, we really got to train smarter. And that's something that the SEAL teams are getting a lot smarter with. That's something that I myself, as I get older, am getting a lot smarter with. I think it's critically important if you have injuries or deficits like I do now. I'm all my gunshot wounds or some things I can't do. So instead of pushing through the pain and saying, well, I'm just going to do this, creating much longer term damage, I look at, okay, where am I pushing up to discomfort that's enabling growth versus pain and I'm breaking myself? And trying to explain that to young men who are training for SEAL training or other individuals out in the civilian world who think, well, I train like a SEAL. I have people reach out to me sometimes on social media, and we'll touch upon training, and they'll say to me, I work out every single day. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's good. My question to you, are you working out at 100% every day? And a lot of people say yes, that's the only way to do it. You look at Jocko, and Jocko puts out, never leave anything, on the table. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because obviously you guys know that the body, our goal is to reach the optimum level, and we're going to have peaks. Training is going to have these peaks and valleys, and our goal is to peak at whatever time we're going for. So for a SEAL team, for us, we want to peak when we're in the combat cycle. And for us, depending on what group you're working with at that time, there's going to be ebbs and flows. So we want to be working out hard to maintain, to be as healthy as possible, given all the crazy things we have to do, carrying, anywhere from 50 to 80 pounds of gear and climbing and all this. But obviously our peak needs to occur during that, 4, 6 month, 10-month deployment when we're conducting combat operations.
It's interesting because I've, and it's been over this last year, I've met probably a half a dozen SEALs that have come through my club through either Dr. Gabrielle Lyon or another friend of mine in the club. And they're on, East Coast team, West Coast team. And every person, everyone who's come through the door has been incredibly humble. And they almost remind me of the person who walks into the room that just knows they're stronger, or there's a level of confidence and humility. They don't have to go around flexing their arms and their biceps. And what becomes a little frustrating for me, and I'm just curious on your opinion, is you hear about finance guys hiring ex-SEALs to come in and put them through SEAL training. And then suddenly they're saying to everyone, oh, I've gone through SEAL training. I'm like, no, you haven't. Like I've been focusing the last 20 years of my life trying to become exceptional at my craft. And I feel like I've only improved this much in a world that, there's this much to improve. So I think there's a level of humility when I get around guys like Derek or Charlie Weingroff or other coaches, physical therapists that are brilliant coaches. Yet people are out there, with these boot camps, and they're trying to portray this vision of, oh, this is military training. I personally think it's embarrassing. Do you laugh at it, or do you just say, listen, this is marketing and this is kind of where fitness isn't going, and let them have it type of thing?
Well, I think it's a blend. I think, we no longer have, 100 years ago, well, maybe possibly 100, 200 years ago, there was a little bit more of a warrior culture. There was a little bit more that, we weren't quite as civilized as we are today, at least in America. In other places in the world, they're a little more uncivilized where if you are not physically ready, you could be in a lot of trouble. So you have to train and you have to mentally be hard because your life may depend on it. I mean, thankfully, we live in a nation where the average person doesn't have to do that. Although I am a huge fan of encouraging every man out there to train himself to the level where he feels like he can handle himself, and women for that matter. So being that we live in a society that's like that, I think there is a hunger for a lot of men and some women who want to know what they're made of. I write about this in the Trident. It's no different as a warrior. Pre 9/11, we trained nonstop. And there were very few combat operations that were occurring before 9/11. Only a couple of platoons a year would do something for real. And everybody was hungry. We used to describe it as being an NFL team that practiced all year, but you were never allowed to play in a real game, even though you felt like you had the ability to play in the Super Bowl. That was pre 9/11. Then suddenly 9/11 happened and everybody went to war. We all wanted to know that everything we had trained for worked. And we used to talk about it. You wanted to know, I had an old, really amazing leader officer who used to say, we wanted to know that you could slap the dragon, that you had the confidence and the ability that you could go up and slap the dragon and fight back and win, or at least walk away, that everything you had trained for worked. And I think there's a lot of people out there that want to test themselves with that. So there's different programs. A great buddy of mine, a guy that's mentoring me, Bedros Koulian, and a teammate of mine who I do my podcast with, the Overcome and Conquer show, they just did a great first-time event called The Project. And the project is exactly like that. It is 72 hours of physical, mental, and emotional training to really forge this overcome mindset. So if it's done right and you really want to push yourself over the edge, I think it's a great thing, because I talk about it. You are never going to get better. You are never going to get more resilient. You're never going to build an overcome mindset without pushing outside of your comfort zone. And that cannot occur unless you do things that are hard and that push you over the edge. So I think they're good. You are absolutely right, Don. I've done some big events. And it makes me laugh. I don't say anything, but I've met some very high-level, successful business people. I'll even say some hedge fund managers who their egos would probably fill the World Trade Center. And I had several of them tell me one time when I met them, "Oh, I absolutely could be a SEAL. I do the same thing in business that you guys do on the battlefield." What I do is
embarrassing. Not to interrupt. I just find it embarrassing, and I respect the confidence. I don't understand how you could turn to someone like yourself and actually say that.
It's an amazing statement. I mean, I mean, even today I laugh when I think about it. And I mean, when he said it, I was just like, I'd love to take you into several of the firefights I was in. Like, if I could snap my fingers and we were back in the middle of that firefight, just to see your reaction in that moment. And I mean, for some of these guys, their ego is so big, I'm sure they'd say, "Oh, I would lead that firefight." But, reality is a much different thing. I've seen, the funny thing about SEAL training is you see a lot of incredibly fit people who start SEAL training. And oftentimes, some of the most fittest people in the class are not there by the time Hell Week is done 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
Although they're the biggest, you can almost guarantee the guys that have the biggest mouths and who say they'll never quit in the beginning of training, almost 90% of the time they're the first guys to quit.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting. We were talking about this last week, and there's sort of this misplaced confidence amongst people, and maybe it's the superhero culture that Don has created. No, I'm just kidding. But this whole we want to see superheroes, and hey, I could be a superhero, right? I watched that show Shazam with my kids, and oh yeah, we want to be superheroes, and I think that's pretty prevalent right now. Is people think it's easy?
But I think they do. But Jason, this is my thing. I mean, I understand that a lot of the same principles in business and in fitness and being successful, there is carryover. There is carryover with these principles. Like, I believe, establishing, what's your end game, starting at the finish, figuring what do you have to do today, not dwelling over the end goal, but being exceptional every day, day in and day out. And when you make mistakes, getting back on the horse, learning from your mistakes, pushing yourself. I believe in all that, but I've coached, I added up the other day, Derek, I've been in this business for 20 years. I probably coached over 30,000 hours of one-on-one coaching. I mean, I've been doing, for a big portion of my career, 40 to 50 one-hour sessions a week. I've done a lot of coaching. And what I found is the majority of the business guys that come in want it in the sense of what they've done in business and the same path that they took to become successful. For some reason, they can't apply that the same way in fitness. And it really is like, I'm like, well, how'd you become successful in business? They're like, well, I went to school. I did an internship program. I went to Goldman and I was resilient. I woke up every day. I looked at the most successful guy. I tried to be better. I just put a countless amount of hours in, and it was just about my work. And like, well, what about with fitness? What did you do this week? Oh, I got to the gym 2 hours. I'm like, well, excuse me, what the hell is that? Like, are you following what I'm saying? So in there, they just can't.
I'm sure there's guys in the NFL who like would get in and hit people like 100 times a game. Like you take Ray Lewis and you drop him in with Jason, he could be cowering like a little baby. You don't know, right? It's not the same.
Well, Jason, what are your thoughts on that?
I think different people have different levels of strengths and they have different levels of priority. So, and I think part of that is maybe they don't understand themselves well enough. Their definition of resiliency is built on one view, one perspective of their lives. So they're not willing to commit. They haven't translated their academic resiliency and their mental resiliency to be successful in business. They're not able to translate that into how they apply that because it's a different type. The mechanics are the same in our brain, but they're processing a different level of pain and discomfort versus what happens in the gym. That's why I encourage everybody, you should do that so I teach something called the Pentagon of Peak Performance. And my second book, Overcome, is built around this principle. And the Pentagon is built on 5 areas of your life that you have to lead yourself. The base level is physical leadership. So it is fitness, nutrition, and sleep. And if you don't have that base level, already you're operating at a deficit for all the other levels. The second level is mental leadership. It's building our knowledge base, getting outside of our comfort zone. The third level is emotional leadership, how we manage our emotions, how we project positivity and all the things we do, how we deal with adversity and the negative things we counter. The fourth level is social leadership, how we build a circle of influence around us, how we take care of our friends, family, fitness business or finances, business, all that. And the top level is spiritual leadership. So I tell everybody, man, you should do some level of fitness because it is one of the greatest areas where you can flex your mental muscles, not your physical muscles. And it translates into everything you do. So if you have somebody that hasn't really done that a lot, they don't know how to do it. What their translation of resiliency and pushing themselves hasn't translated over into the physical realm. And I'll tell you the other thing that we saw a lot of. So Derek, you said you were amazed at hearing that some of the fittest guys and some of the biggest mouth guys were some of the first to quit. I'll be honest. My theory on that is because we see it all the time out in training. This still goes on to this day. As a matter of fact, we're even able now. The preparation that guys are getting to go into SEAL training is so much better than it was 20 years ago because we want them to graduate. So physically, we train them up. They have an 8-week prep course. The way we select them now, and basically say, you have the ability to make it, and we put them through an 8-week prep course where some top coaches are working with them and all the things they need to graduate. By the time they start training, there is unequivocally no reason physically they should not make it through training. Every single guy physically has the ability. But there's a disconnect up here. And what my theory is, and other SEALs feel, is there are some people out there that are just genetically gifted physically. We know that. There are some people who, Usain Bolt is an amazing runner, obviously the fastest man in the world, but he had some genetic gifts that came along that enabled him to do that. Same thing with some of these guys who are phenomenal athletes and then they decide to go to SEAL training. I think you're almost operating at a deficit mentally in the overcome mindset realm if you have been that genetically gifted, that you're able to not put in as much work as someone else and still excel and be ahead of them. Because one of the greatest things about SEAL training is it takes everybody to the edge, and then we knock you off and you fall down onto the rocks below. Every single person, I don't care who you are. And there are some people out there that they don't want to know what rock bottom is. It's too uncomfortable for them. They've never experienced it in their life, so they're not willing to push themselves that far. And it makes them shy away and say, I don't want to do this. You know, I'm resilient, but I'm not willing to push that far. And I think that's why we see a lot of guys who are really talented who end up quitting.
So what you're saying is like failure is a huge part of the process of making somebody a good SEAL, like it sounds like.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of people will say to me, are you a leadership expert? Nope, I'm a failure expert, man. I have failed in some colossal ways, probably more so than a lot of other SEALs out there. And it has made me into who I am today. And SEAL training is built on that principle. It is built on the principle that we are going to make you fail over and over and over. And we're going to tell you how to be perfect. And then, oh, guess what? You're going to be perfect. And then we're going to fail you for being perfect.
Right.
And it's the guys that can't mentally process that, because in their mind, they're saying, you told me how to do everything right. You said do X, Y, Z. I did X, Y, Z perfect. And then you failed me for it. Now I'm being punished for it. And training is like that all the way through. And there are some guys that just can't mentally wrap their head around that, because the instructors are looking for the guys who are going to stay motivated, who are going to stay relentless in their drive, and who are going to stay positive and bring people together as a team despite constant failure and constant chaos.
Now, listen, there's one topic, and I completely understand if you can't discuss this, but are you allowed to discuss SEAL training at all? Is that something that you can, I'm not going into complete detail, but are you able to walk through a little bit of that, or is that something that there's parameters? If you know
I mean, like basic SEAL training when guys, yeah, I can talk. Yeah, a lot of that's unclassified. I mean, you can go watch. The Discovery Channel did a great special on Class 234. I actually served with quite a few guys that were in that class. But training is broken down into 3 phases. You know, and I'll even go back further. If you have a young man that decides, if somebody's listening to this and they say, I really want to be a SEAL, or I'll tell you what we're starting to have, which I think is pretty phenomenal. We've always had this, but we're seeing a higher level of it. We're seeing a lot more younger, and when I say younger, in their early to mid 20s, who are making career changes because they're not happy with what they're doing. So we're having people who have a lot more life experience and a lot more educational experience. You know, they're much more educated coming to the SEAL team. But the bottom line, if somebody's out there listening and they say, I want to be a SEAL, basically they would go to the recruiting station and they'd say, I want to try. They would take a physical test to see if they have the ability to do that. I believe that physical test is still the same. It is a 500-yard swim, side stroke or breaststroke. You have you get a 10-minute break to change your clothes and get ready. Then it is, and let me go back. That 500-yard swim, I think they're telling you got to do it in under 12:30, but if you want to be competitive and you want to be selected, you need to be probably less than 11 minutes. And really to be competitive, you need to be down under 10:30, 10 minutes, really 9:30 and below. Because it's becoming very competitive to get a slot to go to SEAL training. We have so many guys that want to do it. We have what do they call it? It's the draft. We have a draft for SEAL training now. Second one, so you get 10 minutes, you do the swim, and then, or 10-minute break, and then you got to do push-ups. To be competitive, you should be able to do over 100 good push-ups in under 2 minutes. You get a 2-minute break. Sit-ups, you should be able to do 100 good sit-ups in 2 minutes. You get a 2-minute break, and then pull-ups, and not chin-ups, but pull-ups. And you should be able to do at least 20 to 25 good pull-ups. Then you get a 10-minute break, and then you have a run. And that run is 1.5 miles. And you should be able to do that in, I believe the advertised time is 11:30, but the reality is you should be under 10 minutes, 11:30. And all your scores come together to give you your final score. That is combined with, you'll take the ASVAB, the military vocational battery test. It basically says what are your aptitudes in engineering and math and all these different things. A lot of people don't realize you actually have to be pretty smart to be a SEAL. So you have to score pretty high. And they take your physical score, they take your ASVAB score, and they do a psychological profile on you. And those three things come together, and they say, okay, yeah, this guy is eligible. We're going to move him to the next level. So if he gets selected, now he goes to boot camp. He'll go through 8 weeks of boot camp in a special company only for SEALs, divers, the special operations component of the Navy. From there, they go to Great Lakes, Illinois, where they boot camp's up there now also. So from there, they'll just move over to an 8-week SEAL prep program. So it's for all the guys that are going to BUDS, basic underwater demolition SEAL training, and they'll do all their training. They'll train running. They'll learn all the basic things they need to know to be successful at SEAL training. Then they'll ship out to California, and they'll start SEAL training. They'll have a month of pre-training. And during that month of pre-training, they're just getting all their gear. They're getting ready to class up. They're ramping up the workouts to get them ready for SEAL training. And then they'll start first phase. First phase is 9 weeks, and first phase is just really designed to weed people out. It is physically probably the hardest phase. And it is, the average day will start about 4 a.m. and it'll go till probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And constant physical activity. You're constantly cold, wet, coated in sand. And every week there will be timed evolutions. So you will have a 4-mile timed run. You will have the obstacle course, which is timed. You will have a 2-mile timed swim. And every week those times get faster. So every week you have to get better, or else you'll be evaluated and they'll do what's called a performance drop.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's intense.
6 weeks of training. Hell Week is
that it?
Yeah. Hell Week is probably the considered to be the toughest week of training in the entire military. It starts on a Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, depending on when they call it breakout occurs. And you will go from Sunday till Friday, mid-afternoon, Friday night, nonstop. You might, if you're lucky, get about 3 hours of sleep, and it is not sleep in your nice warm bed. It's literally sleeping in the sand under a boat for maybe 15 minutes, which I'll be honest, when you haven't slept for 130 some hours or 72 hours with such grueling conditions, it actually hurts more to sleep. I think it'd be easier if they didn't let you. But Hell Week is the highest attrition rate during training. We lose about 75 to 80% of the class during Hell Week. And from there, you'll finish first phase, and then you move into second phase, which is dive training. So during dive training, you learn everything about scuba. You learn everything about diving, dive physics, dive medicine, which is very academic. We actually lose probably, 10 to 15% of the class due to academic failures, due to those dive medicine and dive physics actually weed people out. And then the last component, the last major weed out, is something called pool comp or pool competency. And basically it is the last evolution before you start learning some of the more advanced dive techniques. And pool competency, roughly translated, it's just getting your ass kicked underwater with your tanks on. And there's a sequence of things you have to do while they do it. You have to be in that sequence. If you do something out of sequence, you fail. And it is tough. I failed it 3 times. Remember, Derek, I'm a failure expert. So you have 4 chances to pass. I failed it 3 times and got it on the 4th. And pretty tough. But once you make it through that, you have about a 90% chance of graduating training. Oh, wow. You're about halfway through at that point. And about the only thing that stops you from graduating at that point is if you do something dangerous, and they deem you a safety risk. So you finish your dive training, you go into the 3rd phase of training, which is basically land warfare training. So you're learning how to do everything on land. You're learning how to use all our weapons, basic shooting, basic tactics, patrolling. You're learning how to conduct missions, and you're learning how to use explosives. The last month of training is conducted out at San Clemente Island, California, off the coast, and it is 1 month straight. You have no breaks. It's 30 days straight. You get very little sleep during that 30 days. You're conducting full mission profiles for the last several weeks. I remember one night we were patrolling in on a full mission profile. I hadn't slept in days, and I literally started hallucinating. I was seeing, like, what's the name of the artist? Escher. You know the artist I'm talking about that paints those really wild and crazy multicolored paintings? Like, I was seeing that on the ground and on cactuses as we were patrolling in. It was like trippy. But anyways, if you make it through that, you now have completed the basic part of SEAL training. From there, you start doing the more advanced things. So I tell people basic SEAL training is like high school. And then you now move on to college. And the college course is called SEAL Qualification Training. It's 4 months of advanced training where you're learning more advanced diving. You're learning to skydive and jump out of airplanes. You're learning what we call maritime operations, how to run our boats over long distances over the horizon. You're learning some basic mobility operations. You're learning what we call close quarters combat. You're learning how to shoot and move within a house and how to hand-to-hand fight. You're learning SEER, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. And then, a couple other little things here and there. When you finally complete all that, it's been probably, a year and a quarter. If you made it through in one shot, and only 25% of students make it through in one shot. I got rolled back. Most guys will get rolled back. Only at that point you finally earn what, your trident, which is what the SEAL emblem is called, and are you officially a SEAL?
Which is the name of the book that you sent over to me. And I remember reading in the book that the U.S. Navy does not, I don't want to say support, but there was almost a page saying that it had to get approved by the Navy, but it's not necessarily supporting everything that you listed in there. Right.
And the Navy did support my book. I mean, they and Naval Special Warfare, the SEAL community, I was very fortunate. They really liked my book and they got behind it. But, like anything, even the Navy, even the military, they have to put out the disclaimer, hey.
I totally get it. I think my big question, and you brought it up earlier, and, as strength coaches, we discuss a lot of, recovering from injury. Your injuries were a little bit different than the injuries that we're dealing with. Are you able to get into detail a little bit on what you went through and what it was like? Because I think it's not only telling a story about, how someone was able to physically get through, but mentally what that did for you and how that sets you on to the path that you're on now.
Yeah, Don, no, thanks. Good question. What's interesting, that's been a really interesting journey. The Trident that you're reading right now, my first book that came out in 2013, it really follows my military career and my injuries. And right up, I think we finished that book in 2011. It came out in 2013, right as I retired. So my next book, Overcome, really picks up with after my retirement and really gets deep into the lessons of how we build that overcome mindset. This concept that I have that everybody in life experiences these life ambushes, and we all have to get off the X to move forward. So coming full circle, the answer to that question, that journey was really hard because I'll be honest, I got out of the military and I did what a lot of people do who sustain grievous injuries. And I'll tell you my injuries. I was in September of 2007, I was leading a team of amazing pipe-hitting individuals, and we got into a huge firefight going after a senior al-Qaeda leader outside of Fallujah, Iraq. And I was stitched by a machine gun, big bullets, that stitched across my body armor. I took 2 rounds in the left elbow that effectively destroyed my elbow. I took a round in the lower bicep that shattered my humerus and took out a huge chunk of the head of my humerus. And then I took a round on the inside of my forearm that effectively just blew out my elbow. So it destroyed. So I lost a big piece of bone in the shaft of my humerus, and it literally destroyed the head of my humerus and the ulnar radius. They couldn't have hit me any better to destroy my elbow. And it damn near took my arm off. So multiple rounds in the body armor, obviously this round. And then I took a bunch of other rounds, not in the body. They were in my gear, my weapon, but I did take a round directly in the face. I had turned to try and move back to the only point of cover we had, and that round caught me from behind, thank God, and it hit me right in front of the ear. It traveled through my face. It exited the right side of my nose. It took off most of my nose. It blew out my right cheekbone. What was left of my cheekbone was broken and kicked out to the right. It vaporized my orbital floor. It broke all the bones above my eye. My eye dropped into this newfound hole in my face. It shattered the head of my jaw, and it broke my jaw to my chin, shattered my jaw down to my chin. So needless to say, really bad injuries. And it took about 4 years to put me back together, 4 years and 40 surgeries. And I was really focused on getting back operational. That was my goal. And I want to give a shout out to my physical therapist, Stu. He was amazing. And my command of the doctors who helped put me back together. But I finally reached a point in 2011, 4 years after my surgeries, where, my whole life, anybody that tells me I can't do something, I've always said, screw you. But I went on a journey. It was always fascinating to me. I would try and find doctors who would get me. All right, I got to back up for a second. Originally, they said they were going to amputate my arm. And the doctor who took care of me was an amazing individual, and actually an ex-SEAL who became a doctor, and he saved my arm. But it ended up being fused, so I couldn't move my elbow at all. Later, he referred me to an incredible hand and arm specialist out of Johns Hopkins who went in and totally rebuilt my elbow joint. And afterwards, he said, going into your elbow was like going into hell. He was like, I will never do it again. He said, but we got you some movement. So this is the limit of my movement. I can flex right up to 90 degrees, and my extension is only about 45. But that's all I got. And I had some pretty good nerve damage. So I went on a journey all across the country looking for doctors who could give me more movement. The original doctor that did the surgery said, no way, I will never go back in there. They literally wrote medical journals about how he rebuilt my arm. But he said, I will not go back in there, and I recommend no one else. He says, the outcome you have is a miracle. So I kept trying to find these doctors. Every time, you talk about egos, it reminds me of these orthopedic surgeons have some pretty good egos too. And every time I'd meet these guys and they'd be like, oh yeah, we can fix your arm. And then they'd slap that x-ray up, and literally it was fun. It was like watching their soul sucked out of their body, because they would just look at
laugh. I don't mean to laugh,
dude,
but
they're like, I don't know how your elbow works at all. They're like, there's nothing I can do with this. I saw about 10 doctors. In 2011, I found the head and arm guy at Duke Hospital. And great guy. And he just sat me down and he said, Jay, I know you want to get back and do your job, but listen, man, he's like, what you have is a miracle. He said, you're not in that much pain. You're able to work out some. You're able to lift some weight with your arm. He said, I'll be frankly honest, I don't even know how your elbow doesn't dislocate every single time you do something from the way it's put back together, because I'm missing so many parts of my elbow. It's kind of held together with scar tissue. And he said, if you were my son, I would not let you get any further surgery on this arm. So I left there, and was like, okay, I guess for the first time in my life, I can't disprove someone. I've had some of the top experts in the country tell me what you have is what you have. So it stopped me from being operational. With my arm like this, I can't reach anything on my left side for grabbing gear, or even putting a helmet on is difficult for me now. So I had to accept I was done. So I finished my career. It was great. I got out, but I'll tell you something that happened. I think it happens with a lot of people who sustain injuries. I told myself a lie that I couldn't work out the way I used to. And I stopped working out for a few years. And I just focused on business. I'm in the civilian world now. I launched my nonprofit. I wanted to help other wounded warriors and all this. And this gets deeper into the book, but I had a life ambush, a business incident that really created a pretty hard thing on my wife and on me and my wife who ran the business in early 2015. And it carried dealing with that problem. It was a lawsuit. I'm going to tell you all that. It was a frivolous lawsuit. It was thrown out. It was dismissed, but it was a really hard thing for us to go through, to be accused of something we did not do. And, so I got to the end of the year. So on top of not working out and dealing with all this stress, I also was drinking way too heavily. So a really bad combination for health. So in the end of December of 2015, I went to the doctor for a checkup, and he evaluated me, and he said, Jay, he said, dude, he said, I know you. I know what you're doing in the community. I was, 15, that was 4 years. I was 40 years old. He said, if you don't make some changes in your life, you're going to be dead of a heart attack in the next few years. He said, your cholesterol's through the roof, your blood pressure's through the roof. And my grandfather died of a heart attack after the war. He survived the war and he died of a heart attack. So for the first time, I said, dude, what are you doing, man? You got to get yourself back in shape. But it was really hard because everything that I used to do, I couldn't do in the same way. Even my leg, they removed one of the bones in my right leg. They removed the fibula, so your stability bone in the backside of my right leg, and that's what rebuilt the bones in my face. So I had stability problems in my leg because I hadn't strengthened it because I wasn't working out. So I literally had to start from scratch to build myself back again. And it was super humbling and frustrating. And literally I had to dig deep into this overcome mindset to rebuild me back into what I was. I remember the first time I tried to deadlift, and they told me I shouldn't deadlift. They told me, oh yeah, you shouldn't deadlift with that arm. You're never going to be able to lift more than 50 pounds. Well, that of course made me once again say, okay, I want to prove you wrong. And this is where I really started to come to understand my body and the difference between pain and discomfort, discomfort of pushing myself. And I really just started to push myself a little further and a little further. So anyways, I get really deep into that in the new book. The bottom line is it's been a several-year journey to get myself back into top physical shape. And I'm pretty excited to say that since I wrote the book, I've already broke this record. But last year in 2018, I deadlifted 335 five times. This year, just a few weeks ago, I deadlifted 355 5 times. It's my goal to deadlift 400. And I'm going to stop there because obviously I don't want to do any damage with my messed up arm. But, there's a hell of a lot of people walking this earth that can't deadlift 400 pounds.
Oh, yeah. Are you crazy? That's almost, especially after what you went through. Derek, why don't you take the
Yeah, Don's probably the same. I'm just sitting here like going, holy shit. After hearing that and what you went through, I was reading something on, the Twitter, and somebody's talking about, the social media is the problem for everybody's mental health issues. And after hearing what you went through, what do you have to say about just dealing with mental health and overcoming challenges? And when you talk to people, because obviously we're a very fragile society right now, and hearing your story, I'm like, I got to do some more stuff with my life. I'm turning 50. that in a couple of weeks I'm like, I got to make up for time here after hearing your story. So
yeah, but I tell people, first thing, one of the big problems with social media, Derek, and even I'm guilty, we all compare ourselves to everybody else out there. And everybody out there is putting out the best version of themselves, So when I say I deadlifted, 355, people are only hearing that. They're not seeing this crazy journey and the hardship that it got me to get to that point. So they don't understand that, and then they feel bad for themselves because they can't instantly do it either. And do they even need to do it? I mean, that's the reality. I encourage everybody to get outside their comfort zone. We need a national movement of grit and resiliency for people to push out their comfort zone. But you need to do it within the realm of yourself. So I do believe unequivocally in that. For some people, they want to get out there and they want to experience what it is to be a SEAL, or at least push themselves to that level. I just read Living with a SEAL by Jesse Itzler, and he was writing about David Goggins. And David Goggins is a genetic freak. I love that guy. He's a genetic freak for Navy SEALs. I mean, he's just on a whole nother level. And Jesse Itzler said, well, I'm going to take a month and train with this guy. And if you go read that book, it's a funny book. Jesse Itzler is a funny guy, and he just talks about it. But the bottom line is this. We, as a nation and as a people, you should constantly be pushing outside your comfort zone within the realm of what you do. So maybe, because obviously we're getting older now. Eric, you're 50, I'm 44, and that's my chronological age is 44. My biological age is like 57. I had the blood work done, and they were like, yeah, dude, you're like 57 years old. Yeah, because this body's been through the trash compactor.
Thanks for that, tell them.
Yeah. So the bottom line is everyone should constantly be looking for ways to do it. I am a big fan of doing it through physical leadership, through fitness, because obviously, the three of us know the impacts of what fitness does for us. I personally want to be here as long as I can. I already know I'm at a deficit. My lovely wife, when we did this biological testing, she works out, but, her diet isn't quite as good. She loves to, but she looks amazing. But so I was convinced, though, because of that, she'd actually be a little bit older than her chronological age. She's like 4 years younger. Yeah, so our difference is like 20 years. And I was like, all right, man, I got to ramp it up because I want to stay around as long as I can, to keep myself in top shape. I love to ski. I love to do outside stuff. I love to golf, even though I suck at it so bad.
Well, hold on. That we might be able to have some fun with when you come up to New York. I'm a member of a spot in Long Island. If you want to come out, I'd be happy to take you. You got to bring your sticks, though.
I will, man. I've lost my drive. I had this great drive last year, and suddenly it's gone. I cannot find it.
We're going to help you out. I got 3 indoor bays up here, too. You can come hit balls upstairs anytime you want.
Yeah, find your drive and drive.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, listen, can you give us one takeaway? I mean, the listener, these are hardworking coaches, fitness enthusiasts, people who are just trying to improve. And I got to be honest, I mean, we are on social. Our social following, there's a lot of nice people on there. There's a lot of less of ego, and I'm finding that a lot of the DMs that we're getting are people that are just really appreciative of the information, and the fact they're going to be able to listen to someone like you, I think, is exceptional. So, can you give some words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, the biggest thing, so many people, one, stop comparing yourself to everybody else. You've got to be the best version of yourself. And it's not going to happen overnight. And the reality is, to get to the best version of yourself, you might not even actually ever get there. But as long as you're constantly driving towards it, and at the end of the day, you can look in the mirror and say, man, I moved the needle in my life to get towards the best version of myself. I didn't sit around and wait. I call it sitting on the X. I didn't sit on the X and feel sorry for myself. I actually moved off the X to move the needle in my life. And I think that's really what it's all about, because so many have this victim mentality. Oh, I can't do it because I was injured. I can't do it because whatever. They make 1,000 different reasons and excuses. Just get out there and do it, man. And at the end of the day, just say, did I put time and effort in to make myself better? You're not an Olympic athlete. You're not a Navy SEAL. If you are an Olympic athlete or a Navy SEAL, then you should be pushing yourself to be the best version of that also. But for the average person out there, make yourself the most above average, excellent version of yourself that exists. And all that takes is a little bit of effort every single day.
Well, I think Derek and I just messaged each other that we're both going to go work out right when we get off for the second time today. So thank you for that. Can you do us a favor? Could you let all of our viewers know you've got your book that's signed that came out. You've got Overcome that's coming out. When is that coming out? Fall or winter?
It comes out December 10th, but we're really trying to drive pre-sales. I'd like to make this thing a bestseller out of the gates. And I got to tell you, Overcome, I am so proud of this book. And this is a book that's going to help anybody. Everybody in life encounters life ambushes. This book is going to help you in all 5 of those areas that I talked about, the Pentagon of Peak Performance, to be the best version of you.
I love it. And we're going to help out as much as we can with that. Can you also give our listeners your social handles? If there's a point of contact or website, anything would be helpful.
Yeah, so you can go to jasonredman.com. That's my main website. My new coaching and consulting website will be up in about a month. And you can link to that, jasonredman.com. And then on social media, I'm on all the socials under Jason Redman, WW. Instagram is the one I am most active on. And I don't have someone answering my Instagram. It is me. So and I do my best to respond to every single person that writes me. So if you write me, I will respond back.
I love it. Derek, any questions before we...
I'm just looking forward to meeting Jason in person, and I saw the trailers for Top Gun 2. I don't know if he's excited about it, but...
I was super excited, man. Dude, my sister and I, who's a retired Air Force officer, we both went military. Like, that movie was like, that was it back in the day, man. I wanted to be Tom Cruise.
Oh,
yeah.
Who does? I still want to be him in that movie. It's the best. Jason, Lieutenant, thank you so much for your time. We're so excited. It's been so great getting to know you, and I hope we have a lot of more, times together in New York golfing. And I'm looking forward for Derek to meeting you as well. He's way on that other coast and very north. So I know we're going to make that happen one day. But
Derek, how far are you from Santa Cruz?
Well, I mean, I'm Vancouver, so whatever. It's like probably like a 3-hour flight. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're super north. Okay.
I'll make it down there. So
I'm doing an event there on August 17th. So I don't know when this airs, but myself and a couple other awesome people, Greg Amundsen, a big CrossFit icon, and Jay Dobbins, an undercover ATF guy who infiltrated the Hells Angels, and one other guy. We're doing an all-day kind of fitness and mindset program.
Awesome. Where are you based out of right now? Like, where are you living?
I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Okay.
Greg Amundsen, we actually had on our show.
Yeah,
he's a couple months ago. Great guy.
He is amazing. I love that guy. Every time, you can't help but feel better being around Greg Amundsen. He just has this incredible positive energy about him.
Send him our best. Send him our best when you see him.
I will, for sure.
All right, guys, listen. Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, fellas. Derek, great to meet you. Well, I'll have to get you that book. I'll talk to Don.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you very much. That was inspiring. I'm going to go work out.
Yeah, man, get some.
Take care, guys.